Game Day Garage presents Campus Blitz with PJ Glasser and Ryan Horvat.
We are getting close. That was our last guest today. Unfortunately, we couldn't get an Ohio State, Washington, USC. We're hoping to grab some of those schools, but they either got practice or they got media availability for some of those players. So the timing did not just work out. But of course, Ohio State, the number one team in the AP poll. So we got to talk about the Buckeyes for the upcoming season. And look, we've been going through some of these teams, Horvat, and as you get really in a lot of these conferences, like some teams just get fortunate with the luck of the draw and they avoid some of the top teams. Other schools, they got to play all of them. And Ohio State's got to play all of the top teams this year, dude. They are at Indiana, at USC, home Oregon, home Michigan, at Nebraska, as we were just talking about with Bobby. Then they also are at Texas in week 2. I think this is the toughest schedule in college football. And again, we know in the playoff, in these 2 years where they've gone to 12, 9-3 is usually a death sentence. Now, with this schedule, the fact that they're Ohio State and they start number 1, maybe they're able to overcome it. But like, what do you think, man? 10-2 for Ohio State? Are they going to go 11-1? Like, what would be your thoughts?
That's the thing. Like, I could see them running the table just because of the talent that they have, right? They got the quarterback. They have maybe the best college wide receiver. I mean, we do this every other year with these wide receivers now, man, especially at Ohio State, but he's an absolute freak. The defensive side of the ball, I don't think there's going to be any drop-off. You look at the recruiting class. You look at what they do in the portal. I like Ryan Day. I mean, I don't like him as a Notre Dame guy, but, I mean, I do think he's a good coach. When they won the national title a couple of years ago, with Chip Kelly, they completely they had that loss and then nobody believed in them. And then they revamped and they completely changed their offense going into the playoff. Just a great program. I could see them running the table because of the talent. I could also see them having a couple trip ups, maybe only winning 9 games, especially it's so hard now. College football has changed so much because of the portal and because of the NIL and all that. And just because of schedules like this. I mean, last year I thought Clemson was going to be a double-digit win team. Klubnik was going to be a top 10 pick. I was wrong. I thought the same thing about Penn State. I thought Penn State was going to win it all last year. They were a complete disappointment. I don't think there's any chance Ohio State's a disappointment, although losing 2 games in the regular season would be a disappointment. They're most likely, at worst, 10-2 and back in the playoff and competing for a title, but that schedule is brutal, man. And for example, I like Texas this year. Last year, I liked Ohio State in that game. This year, I kind of like Texas. I think Arch is going to be much better with a better offensive line in any sort of a run game. Arch was the leading rusher for Texas last year. The conference games are going to be tough. So on paper, they look perfect. I really do like Julian saying, but I could see there being a couple trip-ups, man, because of that schedule. The Big Ten's loaded this year, and that non-con's pretty tough with the Texas game.
Ryan, I think Ohio State, Texas is the biggest game of the college football season. The pendulum swing from that game for either team is just going to be massive. Like we saw it last year. You know, we all thought both of those teams opening the season, whoever loses that game will still be fine. Maybe we'll get a rematch in the playoff or whatever. It ended up being too much for Texas to overcome, losing that game to Ohio State, because then they could only afford to lose 1 SEC game. They lose 2, and then they're out of the playoff. The same could be said for Ohio State this year. If they lose that game to Texas, then all of a sudden they just have 1 game that they can drop the rest of the season. And with road trips to Indiana, USC, Nebraska, Iowa, and home games against Oregon and Michigan, that's a tough ask. Even though they might be the best team in the country, the most talented team in the country, just losing 1 game in that Big Ten schedule could be really, really tough. So I think Texas-Ohio State is the biggest game of the season. I think there's a chance that the loser of that game could miss the college football playoff, while the winner of that game might just end up winning the entire thing. So just a massive, massive game in week 2. I also will say Arthur Smith is the offensive coordinator for Ohio State, which I don't think a lot of people realize. So while they do maybe have the best player in the sport in Jeremiah Smith and a terrific quarterback in Julian Sayin, I don't know. We all saw what Arthur Smith looked like in Atlanta.
I don't want to cut you off, but I want to say something, right? Okay, so I don't want to make that mistake, though, where I'm like, Arthur Smith is a dumbass, and so I have to fade the Buckeyes offense because Julian Sayin's a stud. Jeremiah Smith's a stud. And this is the mistake I made on the defensive side of the ball and the fuck up, excuse my language, but I'm so angry with Penn State last year that I made with Penn State, right? They make the Allen hire, and I'm like, oh my God, the Penn State defense is going to be even better. Ohio State, replaces Jim Knowles, not Allen, Jim Knowles with Matt Patricia. And I'm like, Patricia? I know the Buckeyes defense has a ton of talent, but we remember Matt Patricia as a head coach in Detroit. We remember, it didn't work out, and he was pretty much a doofus. But man, that hire was awesome, and the defense was even better. And they did they really complicated some stuff up for opposing offenses. So I'm not going to make that mistake. The offense will probably somehow be even better with Arthur Smith, man. But I was just thinking about that. I was like, I remember last year just completely shitting on the Matt Patricia hire, and that defense was lights out last year.
They were, to his credit. I think a lot of that, though, was because of Caleb Downs. I think Caleb Downs was a generationally good college football defender, at safety. He started for Nick Saban as a freshman at Bama, which, just rarely happens. And then he is a freak. I thought he was the best player in the draft this season. You just don't get, guys like that every year, every 5 years, every 10 years. And even though they were so loaded, they had all those top 10, top 15 picks, right? With the Stunny Siles and the Arvell Reeses and all these guys. To me, Downs was the key to that entire operation, especially for a guy like Matt Patricia. So yes, they're going to be loaded this year. Yes, they're going to have great talent yet again and plenty of NFL draft picks, but I'm just not sold that Matt Patricia was so great in year one. Now all of a sudden he's going to be really good. I want to see what he looks like without Caleb Downs. We also have somebody commenting that Ohio State, the best team in the country. When was the last time Ohio State won the Big Ten? At Ty C. Summerall 8718. Ty C, I don't think it's really much of a hot take to say Ohio State's the best team. They're the number one in the AP poll. They're the favorite to win the national title. And they also won it 2 years ago. So I understand they haven't won the Big Ten in
Neither
a while.
of us are picking them, though.
No, we are not picking them to win the national championship. So for that, I agree with them. But I do think they are on paper, potentially with the talent, they are disgusting. So,
yeah, as a Notre Dame fan, I hate them more than anybody. I got to be honest, man. So Ohio State, I just kind of think their prices and everything are about right. Penn State's the team that intrigues me the most. I was shopping around a little bit, and I was looking at their win totals, where they're at right now, because I played at 8.5. 8.5 right now is the best price, -166. I believe at BetMGM. Everything's plus money, but you could bet Penn State right now over 9.5 wins. It's just funny, man, because last year, high expectations. They lose both running backs. Drew Aller's gone. New coach and Matt Campbell. And yet still, while we say, rebuild year, that's not what the market's telling you. 9.5 wins? A 10-win season? Right? You know what I mean? So, why not? If you think Penn State's going to go 10-2, sure, 9.5 at +120 is a good price, but why not just bet them to make the college football playoff 3-1 or better? I think I'm seeing I think you could still get a +350 out there. Penn State's my sleeper team, not only in the Big Ten, but in college football this season.
Dude, that's what I've been telling you.
I believe in Matt Campbell.
+460. Yeah, I bet him too. Oh, God, I hate that we're a Penn State show again. What could go wrong? But I'm with you. I like Penn State too. We were talking about him with Daniel. The fact they avoid the big three, no Oregon, no Indiana, no Ohio State.
No Drew Aller.
No Drew Aller. We like Rocco Beck. I like DeAnton Lynn as the defensive coordinator. Are we a Penn State show again? I think we probably are.
I mean, unfortunately, I just feel every other year at least, we're going to go back. We're going to go back to our roots on this show. I'm surprised that I'm not talking myself into Michigan. If Kyle Whittingham wasn't 125 years old, I'd be all over that train, dude. Utah's made me so much money the last decade, minus the last year with Cam Rising, 45-year-old Cam Rising. But what I love about Michigan, going back to our conversation there, last year they were 14th in the country. And everybody's like, oh, they lost Justice Haynes. They're going to be even better. They have probably the best 1-2 punch in the backfield in the Big Ten. They're going to average close to 220 rushing yards. They're going to be top 10 in rushing. And Whittingham, that's what they did at Utah. So if they play tough defense, if they run the football, and if Bryce Underwood isn't a complete bust, Michigan could be this. Michigan could also be a 10-11 win team. I know a lot of people are betting their unders, man, and I don't love the schedule, but if they could run the rock and get back to playing lights out defense like they did under Harbaugh before Wink Martindale, I think they're going to be scary.
Dude, I'm with you on Michigan. Look, we know in football, if you have a quarterback, like you always got a chance. And Underwood, again, he was like the undisputed #1 recruit coming out of college in 2025, just last year. He didn't have a great freshman year, but you bring in Whittingham, whose MO is always, his teams are great in the trenches. And he brought over his offensive line coach, Jim Harding, to go along with the Michigan talent that you usually have on the O-line. I'm with you. I kind of think they could be, if Underwood turns into the guy that a lot of us thought he would be, it could be a dangerous team. What are your thoughts on USC? We didn't have anybody talk about the Trojans this year. I have seen a lot of people making the case for them to make the playoff. Jaden Mayava comes back at quarterback. A lot of people feel like this is Lincoln Riley's best team since he's been in LA. They also have a tough schedule. Home game against Oregon, home game against Ohio State, at Indiana, at Penn State. The non-conference is cake, San Jose State, Fresno State, Louisiana. So they should be 4-0 going into the Oregon game. The reason I can't get there with USC, Lincoln Riley cannot beat any competent team in the Central or Eastern time zone since he's been at USC. He can't do it. He can beat them when they come to the Coliseum. He can beat them in LA. But if you ask his team to go on the road and beat a bowl caliber team, just a bowl, not even a national title caliber team, bowl caliber team, they can't win that game. So again, like on paper, you're looking at like at Rutgers, at Penn State, at Wisconsin. Like these are games that they should win. They're not going to win all those games. And then if you think that they're going to lose to Oregon, Indiana, and Ohio State, I don't see the path for USC making it to the playoff. So I think the Trojans will probably be like an 8-4, 9-3 team potentially this season, but I can't see them getting to the playoffs.
So I've been going back and forth on them only because they got the quarterback, like you said. They're going to be able to run the ball. The receivers, I mean, even though they lost Lemon, they're going to be loaded there. The offense, they're going to score over 35 points per game. I'm not worried about that. I do worry, like you said, when they step up in class. But what I worry, and I think the defense is going to be good. I keep going back and forth, man, because like this has to be the year. Because 8-4, 9-3 is just not good enough, especially for that contract for Lincoln Riley. And like we're talking about Dan Lanning. Remember, he was the golden boy. They got to get to the playoff, man. But the problem is the schedule. Like they should have done that last year. Last year should have been the year that they won 10, 11 games and got there. They didn't play Indiana last year. Now they have to play them in November. They didn't have to play Ohio State. They get that before Indiana. They have to play them. They're going to play Penn State, who I just got done hyping up. They're going to play Wisconsin. We both like Wisconsin this season. I bet their win total over, man. I think Fickle's finally going to get that thing back on the tracks.
Yep.
That schedule is freaking brutal for USC. So that's my issue.
I'm with you. I can't get there. The way that their schedule has right now, they play 5 ranked teams in the AP poll, including a 3-game stretch where they got to go home Oregon, home Washington, at Penn State, that Wisconsin game, and then Ohio State and Indiana, as you mentioned. It's just going to be tough. I mean, last year, like you look at USC, right? They went 9-3 in the regular season. Their losses were at Notre Dame, at Oregon, and at Illinois. So they pretty much beat all the teams that they were supposed to beat, and then they lost all the road games to good teams. Again, you look at their schedule this year, and they do have to play Indiana on the road, Penn State on the road, and then they get Ohio State and Oregon at home. So if they just continue to do what they've been doing under Lincoln Riley, they lose the road games to the ranked teams. And then I can't see them sweeping Oregon and Ohio State at home. Maybe they win one of those games. I can't give them both. I kind of feel like 9-3 is their ceiling. So
yeah, the win total pretty much everywhere is 8.5 right now.
And that's right. That's
plus
the right
115,
line.
plus 110. So 9-3 is not going to get them into the playoffs. So I think that's just about right. Now, it wouldn't surprise me, like if they did win 10 games, if they win one game that they're not supposed to, maybe they beat Oregon, they do get them in. Although I cannot pick right now Lincoln Riley in a game against Dan Lanning. I was just watching that clip where it looks like Dan Lanning's all loaded up on cocaine and he's like breathing out of his nostrils, dude. And I know like he struggles to win the big game himself, but I'm taking him over Lincoln Riley any day. So I'm staying away from USC.
Washington Huskies are kind of an intriguing team. Like, I don't think they're going to make the playoff. I don't think they're going to win 9 or 10 games or anything like that. But Jett Fish is a good coach. Damon Williams comes back at quarterback. They also got a tricky schedule. They're at USC, at Oregon, home Indiana, home Penn State, and home against Iowa. So maybe there is a path for them to kind of win 9 games there. If I'm being honest, though, Ryan, I kind of thought Damon Williams was going to be a lot better than he actually was last year. Like, I thought there was a chance maybe he could be in, like, the Heisman conversation because of what a great dual threat he is, and they had some great receivers last year. This year, you lose some of those guys. You lose Boston at receiver, and I don't know, man. And Washington is another one of these teams. They're just like USC. When they got to travel to the Eastern time zone or the Central time zone, they usually lose those games. So that, to me, I think USC is a better version of Washington, but I kind of view both of those teams the same way.
Yeah, I like Damon Williams as a college quarterback. I mean, he's like 5'10", 185 pounds, so I don't think he's anything more than a college quarterback. But that offense was fun, and I think like a little underrated last year, man. They averaged over 400 total yards and 34 points per game. I think like at best, probably 7-8 win season, though, when you look at the schedule. It's just so hard. I like all these teams in the Big Ten, right? Like I can't fall in love with every single one of these teams. But I think 8-4. That's where I would be at with Washington. I mean, actually, as I look at it, the schedule is not terrible. No Ohio State, no Illinois, no Wisconsin, who we're high on, no Michigan. 5 of the first 6 games of the season, they get at home before they go to Purdue. I'm not very high on Purdue this year. And then they get a week off before they take on Nebraska. And, Nebraska, that's most likely a loss, but they get a full week to prep. So with Williams, with Fish, they got a lot of returning production, and I do like what they did in the portal. Again, like maybe they are. It wouldn't surprise me if they were the sleeper team, but I think 8-9 wins is probably their ceiling.
I think that's fair. I would agree with that. And then you brought up Wisconsin. I told you when we were doing this pod like a month ago, I took a flyer. I always take one flyer just about every year on a team to make the college football playoff because in the 2 years that we've gotten the 12-team playoff, Ryan, right? You had Indiana make it in the first year when nobody thought in Cignetti's first year Indiana was going to make the playoff. And then last year, you had 2 group of 5 teams make the playoff, right? You always get weird shit that happens in the college football playoff. There's always a thing or two that nobody expects. So I took a shot with Wisconsin at 30-1 to win or to make the college football playoff just because they have the easiest schedule in the Big Ten. No Ohio State, no Oregon, no Michigan, and no Indiana. We both love the quarterback that comes over in Colton Joseph, who was one of our favorites in the group of 5 at Old Dominion. And if you've been watching Wisconsin football, it's kind of unbelievable what's happened to them in the last 3 or 4 years where they bring in a transfer quarterback and he gets hurt within the first 2 or 3 weeks of the season, like clockwork. Every year it happens where they bring in a new guy. They're thinking, okay, maybe we'll get some good quarterback play this year. And like clockwork, he gets hurt in the first 2 or 3 weeks. So if Joseph can just stay healthy, I think they'll be much better than they've been on offense. And then defensively, you kind of know what you're always going to get out of Wisconsin. Like we were talking about with Zach Neal, I mean, they beat 2 ranked teams last year in Camp Randall. It's still a tough place to play. Yeah, they open up against Notre Dame and Lambeau to start the season. They're going to lose that game. But outside of that, again, because they don't have to play any of the top teams in the league, maybe they just lose one game along the way. It was 30-1, so took a shot with the Badgers to make the play.
I got to be honest. I saw, not that I pay attention to it, but, like the guys that do gambling data for a living and do the insights, I don't really care about like betting splits, but I think I saw Notre Dame's the most bet team to win it all, and they're one of the favorites to win it all. There's a lot of if I could do it, and I don't want to do it, I would bet isn't their win total 11.5?
Who's that? Notre Dame?
Notre Dame.
Yeah, it is.
I'd bet the under. They're going to get tripped up by one of these fucking teams. And I can see it being like Wisconsin, dude. They're going to go 10-2 most likely. And then the committee is going to give them a double bird again. Now, I don't know about that, but it's just like very high expectations. I haven't heard anybody be like, I think Notre Dame's a little overhyped this year. I have not heard one person say that. Everybody loves them. And like in the Midwest, there's too many Notre Dame fans, or if you went there, but like everybody's supposed to hate Notre Dame. Now everybody's like hyping them up. I don't like that. But with Wisconsin, man, you said it. Like if Colton Joseph could just stay healthy, Honestly, there's no chance that this offense could be any worse, man. They averaged 12.8 points per game last year. 12.8 points per game. That's like as many as the sixth man for Florida's basketball team. They scored 14 points, 2 touchdowns or fewer in 9 fucking games.
I know. So, dude,
they scored 10 or fewer points in 7 games last season. That's terrible. I had to actually look. It's one of the worst offenses. Penn State was dead last in the country in scoring in 2023 and 24. They averaged 14 points per game and 13. Northwestern in 2022 only averaged 13. 12 points per game, 12.8. There's no chance the offense could be any worse. So let's say they average 20 points per game, 21. That's at least an added 2 wins with that defense. And the pressure's on for Fickle. Like, people hate him, and rightfully so. I think Wisconsin's going to win 8-9 games this year. I think they're going to win 8 games this year.
I could actually see. I do like over the win total. This was Wisconsin last year against Power 4 teams. You ready for this?
Yeah, hit me.
14 against Alabama, actually. 10 against Maryland, 10 against Michigan, 0 Iowa, 0 Ohio State, 7 Oregon, 13 Washington, 7 Indiana, 7 Minnesota, and then 27 points against Illinois. I don't know what happened against Illinois, but dude, there was a stretch where they scored 7 points in a 3-week span.
Like, I'm not being a dick here. You could take the best offense in DC, high school football, and I'm not saying it's going to look any better or they're going to statistically be any better. The only difference would be like maybe a couple kids would die on the field or get injured going against like college talent, but how could it be any worse? You're getting shut out. You're getting shut out. You're scoring like
physically. It's kind of impossible to get worse.
That's when you know Alabama needs to get their shit together. You can't be giving up 14 points to last year's Wisconsin.
If I remember I think it was like it was at 7, and then they gave up like a bullshit touchdown at the end. If I kind of remember correctly, but yeah, looking back, I mean the fact they gave up 2 touchdowns to that team.
I think I bet them in the first half and they covered somehow.
Kind of incredible. All right, Horvat, some of the other Big Ten teams we did not talk about: Illinois, Maryland. You got Michigan, Pat Fitzgerald in his first year in East Lansing. Michigan, Northwestern, Rutgers are some other teams. Anybody else you want to touch? Did you end up doing anything with Michigan State this year, or you passed on them?
Yeah, Michigan State I like, man. I like their win total. I don't know where it's at today, but I'm a big Pat Fitzgerald guy. 18 years of college football. He won 110 and 101 at Northwestern, where he had to recruit people with high GPAs. Now we get to see what he does. You know, obviously, like there's a lot that they got to work on there. It hasn't been very good. So we'll see like how long it takes to turn that program around. But I think that like I kind of like some of the moves that he made. They bring in Nick Marsh. You know, they got some talent. They got Frederick Moore, the wide receiver from Michigan, coming over. I think if you could find a 3.5 like I did on their win total, I think they win 4 or 5 games. You look at the schedule, they don't have to play against Iowa. They don't have to play against Indiana. They don't have to play against Penn State or USC. They had to play all 4 of those teams last year, and they got destroyed by all 4 of them. They don't have to play Ohio State. They get Notre Dame, so that's going to be an ass kicking. But I think, especially if you look at the non-con, I think this team could win 4 or 5 games. And yeah, the win total, it's a little juiced right now, but it's still 3.5. So I like Michigan State as like a buy low team because of the coaching change. I like Pat Fitzgerald, and I'm glad he's back in college football after whatever went down at Northwestern, where it turns out he was innocent.
He's a good coach. Our guy Bradley in the chats is saying that all the high schools down here in South Florida better offense
than so
Wisconsin.
True. So
I mean, 1,000%, especially last year. I mean, even probably this year. That'll be the case. Northwestern, for me, I think is the interesting team. I'm debating going under on their win total because I don't know if you've seen their schedule. They play week 1 against South Dakota State. Week 2, they have a bye week. Then they have to play 11 straight games on their schedule against 10 Power 4 teams. Why would they do that? Why would you take your bye in week 2 and then play 11 straight games? How does that make any sense? So
I don't know.
Keep that in mind because we will definitely be fading them at the end of the year. When those kids are gassed, you know, they'll have a lot of excitement early. They'll have the new stadium opened up. people will be, maybe they'll do some good things. Maybe they'll play some teams competitive. But there's a stretch where they got to play at Oregon, home Iowa, and at Ohio State. Oh, baby. Those last 2 games at Minnesota and home against Illinois, I cannot wait to bet the Gophers and the Illini in that game. But I saw that. That was one of the weirdest scheduling quirks to me, is that they took a bye in week 2 and then play 11 straight games to end the season.
What's
funny?
I
haven't bet it yet, but I think I might.
I would be on the under with you because, there's actually some expectations because they won 7 games last year. I've kind of figured out, I told you this last year because the win total, I believe, was 3.5, and I bet the over. Any year that there's no expectation for Northwestern football, they win 6 or 7 games. Any year where people are like, hey, they're not going to be that bad.
True.
Complete disaster.
So true. So
and you know what? I'm not an Aiden Childs guy, which is kind of why I like Michigan State. You know what's funny, man? Pat Fitzgerald, former Northwestern coach, he gets the Michigan State job, and Childs goes to Northwestern. So I just thought that was kind of funny. I don't think they're going to be very good. That schedule is brutal. So I'm with you. If anything, under on them. I don't really know what to do with some of these middle of the pack teams. Last year, I was pretty high on Rutgers coming into the season. Not high on them. I thought that they were going to be a covering machine. But this year, I really don't know what to expect from them. But I'm with you on Northwestern, man. I think the under is a good play there. I haven't got there yet, but that would be my only look.
I'm with you, and that's a good note about Childs. I liked him at Oregon State. When Jonathan Smith had him there, I thought he was going to turn himself into a good little quarterback, and just hasn't been the case. But you're so right on the Cats too. Whenever there's expectations, that's when they fail. And again, because they're opening up that new stadium, they won 7 games last year. Braun's turned out to be a really solid coach. I think the under on Northwestern might be the play.
Not to cut you off, I should say though, because we kind of skipped over them. The team that so you said you were going to take a flyer, or already took a flyer on Wisconsin to make the college football playoff. I hate to do this because nobody's a PJ Fleck guy unless maybe you live in Minnesota or you're a member of PJ Fleck's family. What if this is the year for the
our guy Bradley likes the Gophers to win 9 or 10 games, and he doesn't know why. Sounds like you're in the same boat.
I'm with him, dude. Drake Lindsay, right? I love the big 6'5", 235-pound quarterback, man. And, when you think Minnesota football, you think they're going to run the rock. But last year, he was pretty good. There was 5 games when he completed over 60% of his passes. They won all 5 of them. Now, they need some wide receivers that are going to create separation. But the offensive line under PJ Fleck at Minnesota is always going to be good. Now, when they step up and play real defenses, that's an issue. And they were, I believe, 129th in total offense last year. But I think the offense with Lindsey should be better. The defense is probably going to be pretty solid. I'm just looking at this schedule right now for them because I haven't done anything with them yet. I kind of like Minnesota this season, man.
No Ohio State, no Oregon,
no Illinois, no USC. I think I think 8 wins is a realistic expectation for them. Maybe I'll take a flyer on them to win the Big Ten if I have a couple drinks this weekend or something. Nothing yet. But I'm with them on Minnesota. I think they're going to be sneaky good and competitive this year.
It's a good point on Drake Lindsay because, look, you got Dante Moore, you got Julian Sayin, you got Josh Hoover, right? You got some really, really good quarterbacks in the Big Ten. Lindsay's the best one that nobody talks about. He's he's an NFL quarterback. And I like the running back Darius Taylor too. Defense is always solid, like you said, with Minnesota. I wish that towards the end of the year, they got some more warm weather teams. Now, they do get UCLA at home in November, which is great. I also kind of wish that, I guess you can't play USC and UCLA in the same year. So the fact that they get UCLA in November is a good thing. But yeah, they avoid a lot of the top teams. So I don't know if I can get to the playoff with Minnesota, but I could buy maybe 8, maybe 9 wins with that team. We'll see. They did go 8-5 last year. Always a great bet in a bowl game too, because PJ Fleck, his starters are most likely going to play. They're going to be motivated. So if they get to a postseason game, I'll likely be on the Gophers as well. Horvat, how many teams are making the playoff out of the Big Ten this year, and who are those teams?
Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State.
Just 3, no Indiana.
Yeah, probably Indiana too.
I mean, how do they not make it?
What about Michigan? Where are you at with Michigan? Under or over?
I just think the schedule's too hard.
Just like
I would actually maybe lean over the win total at 7.5 just because of the upside if Whittingham can get Underwood to play better. I think Oregon, of all the teams actually to make the Big Ten, or out of the Big Ten to make the playoff, I think Oregon's the biggest lock, I would say.
I like Oregon.
They have the easiest schedule. Lanning always beats the teams he's supposed to beat. I mean, they're just loaded. I think the Ducks are definitely in.
I like Oregon the best. It's like I keep wanting to say, man, can Indiana do it again 3 consecutive years? But that's what college football is, right? Every year, if you're in the SEC, you're like, can Saban do it again? And yeah, even a down year is a 10-win season. Can Kirby do it again? Yeah, Georgia hasn't won a title in a couple of years, but every year they're winning double-digit games and they're in the playoff. You know what I'm saying? So, with Indiana, I think the expectation now is they win 10 games. So 4 or 5 teams most likely getting in from the Big Ten. I do think that one of these teams will be a letdown, though. And it's hard to say, even with that schedule, it's going to be Ohio State. I Penn State's my dark horse, my sleeper team. I am hearing a little bit too much love, I think, though, for Penn State all of a sudden.
I don't think so. I don't
No?
think there's I don't think so. I think of anybody doing a podcast, we're the only one that's maybe simpatico on Penn State. I'll go Indiana, Oregon. I'll go Penn State as well. I know I took a flyer on Wisconsin to make the college football playoff. I don't know if I'd pound the table and do that.
No.
Maybe for this exercise, or maybe, next week if we make some big predictions, I will. I go back and forth on Ohio State. I really do. I mean, they are so freaking loaded, dude. That team is just, the firepower that they have. I worry that they're last year's Texas, though, Ryan, where it's just we thought that Texas team had so much talent too, and then they lose that early season game to Ohio State. The schedule's too hard in the conference, and then they just miss the playoff. I don't know if that's going to happen this year with Ohio State too. Brett McMurphy also, if people haven't seen, on Twitter, always drops some great nuggets when the AP poll is dropped. Do you know that 22 of the last 23 years, the team ranked 1 in the preseason AP poll has not won a national championship?
Yeah, I saw that as well.
So
crazy, right?
That is insane. Not great if you're an Ohio State fan.
No.
Now they can obviously make the playoff and not win the title. I don't know. You know what? Fuck it. I'll go Wisconsin. I mean, what the hell?
There you go.
Nobody's picking them. Like I said, dumb shit happens every year in the playoff where there's 1 or 2 teams that nobody expects. So everybody is going to pick Oregon, Indiana, and Ohio State. So I'll be a little different. I'll pick Ohio State out, and I'll go with Wisconsin and Penn State in there.
What would the fallout be if this Ohio State team didn't make the playoff? I'm not saying wins the national title, because now Ryan Day has his chip. He's got his championship. But, man, there's so much talent. Jeremiah Smith
Well, if they miss the playoff, do they still beat Michigan? Because you and I both know that's the big question.
Let's say they miss the playoff and
lose to Michigan at home.
Then they're calling for Ryan Day's head again.
They absolutely are. He wouldn't
but
get
you're
canned.
right. If they beat Michigan and it's an 8-9 win season, dude, can you see this team only winning 9 games? I just can't. I think 2 trip-ups max. I do think Texas is beating them. And if not, I got to get back on the Sark train. And I know I hate that Sark can't beat top 25 teams, because the last 2 years at Texas he has. And we can't judge newly sober Sark at USC with no talent, what he did against the top 10. But we could judge what he does at Texas now. If Texas, I think that game, would you argue that game's, it's important for both teams. You've called it the biggest game of the year, and I agree. Would you argue that game's bigger for the morale and the season-long objective or whatever for Texas, though, with Sark and with Arch? Because last year,
it's not a debate.
Right? Because Ohio State,
all the pressure's on
game,
Texas.
They lost when they won the national title game. Everybody was down on them. They lost to Michigan, and then they had to revamp everything up, and that was probably a good thing for them, because then they changed their offense a little bit.
Tell me if you think this is a fair comp. I think Texas has the potential to be last year's Penn State, where Penn State had everything going for them in the offseason. We all loved them going in. They lose that early season game to Oregon, and the season just spirals on them.
See,
and I think with Texas, if they lose to Ohio State, I think their season could frickin' spiral. Because, Ryan, like, look at what Texas did last year when they had to go on the road. They lost at Ohio State, they lost at Georgia, and they lost at Florida. Their only 2 wins on the road in true road games were against Kentucky and Mississippi State, and they had to beat both of those teams in overtime. They didn't win a single true road game last year in regulation. I know the team's better this year. The offensive line's better. The receiving core is elite. Arch should be better than what he was last year. But, like, Sark, just as much as you and I like him, he's not great as an underdog. He's not great for the most part in big games. And he just has not been great on the road in SEC play. And they got a trip to Knoxville. They got a trip to Baton Rouge. They got to play Oklahoma in the Cotton Bowl. Dude, I think there's a case that maybe they could be last year's Penn State. If they lose that Ohio State game, I could see the season potentially getting away from them.
That's why you got to give like these teams credit for playing these non-con, these big games like that, because it could go either way, right? Like, obviously you want to get your losses out of the way early in the year if you're going to lose games in college football, because you want the committee to remember what you did the second half of the season, especially in conference play. Like, you're not going to get punished for playing the top team in the country. But at the same point, man, you lose a game like that, even a non-con game, in today's world of college football. Look at Notre Dame last year. Granted, they're not in the conference, but 2 losses, 10 wins, and they're out. And then the pressure is on every single week. You can't have that trip up. And you can't have that trip up in college rivalry games. That's where I'm with you. Like, losing that game, while you could say, hey, we lost to a top 5 team. We're only going to get better. We'll be a different team if we see them again in the playoff. Pressure's on if you drop that game. If you win it, you're money, right? You're higher than ever. Then you just have to worry like that there's not a drop off. You're not too high. Like, that's what impressed me the most, honestly, about Indiana and Stignetti last year, man. And why it also helped that, like, Mendoza, you could say like he's a nerd and he's a dork off the field, whatever, but like, he went there to play football. Obviously, he didn't even go to class. What did he take? Like 1 class? He already graduated, but he went there to be the number 1 overall pick, to be the Heisman and to win, because like, that's hard. They run the table. They win the Big Ten championship game. And then, Cignetti, I remember he had the quote even after. He's like, I got to get these guys humble and hungry again for the college football playoff in a couple weeks. So that's the toughest part, is if you're Texas and you beat Ohio State, you can't be too high. But, like, you're feeling good if you win that game. Same for Ohio State. But that game is so important, man, even though it's non-con, because if you lose that early in the year with those 2 teams' schedules in SEC and Big Ten play, you're fucked if you lose a 3rd game.
I'm with that. It is the biggest game in college football this season. Like, I don't really think it's up for debate. Like, it is the biggest game in the sport because both of those teams can easily win the title. But with the schedules, I think there's a world where both of those teams could miss the playoff as well. Ryan, if you had to bet one Big Ten team to win the national title, who would it be?
Oregon. I'm a big Dante Moore guy. I usually watch all the games at home by myself because I'm a hermit and I have a lot of money on these games. But I made the mistake of not only betting Oregon in the college football playoff last year, but I watched the game at a bar and I was like telling all the casuals, the NFL guys, I'm like, Dante Moore is the best quarterback. Like, fuck Mendoza. And then wasn't it the first play of the game? He stares down the receiver and throws the pick 6, or am I tripping? I don't know. It was one of the first plays of the game. He goes on and not even complete like 50% of his passes in that game. But I'm a big Dante Moore guy. They're loaded on the offensive side of the ball like they usually are. They'll be able to run the ball for 7 yards per carry. I just worry, like, when they step up and they play these big games, the Ohio States, like Dan Lanning, he says all the right things. And they show us the cuts of the locker room. And when they're playing Colorado, they're all about the clicks. We're here to kick ass and win championships, blah, blah, blah. I want to see that like in the big games. Dan Lanning has to win the big game. But if I had to pick any of these teams, it's Oregon, man. Right? Like, eventually he's got to win one. Because everything's there. They have the talent. They have the money in that program. They have new uniforms every fucking week. They're pumping so much money in the portal, in recruiting, in NIL. Oregon for me.
They're so trendy. Everybody likes Oregon. And it makes me not like Oregon. I don't like how trendy they are.
See, I'm like that in the NFL with the Rams. I think the Rams missed the playoffs. Stafford, last year, he was the MVP. He's awesome. Let's not forget about July and August when everybody was worrying that the guy was going to be in a body bag going into the season. Remember with his bad back, this and that. Puka Nacua is spinning off the planet as great as he is. Maybe Aaron Donald comes back. Maybe he doesn't. They made all the right signings. I know everybody loves McVay. I think something happens and they're the bust of the NFL. I think they win 8-9 games because they are so trendy. And that division's fucking loaded. The Seahawks are plus 220. They're the defending Super Bowl champs.
I know.
49ers, I know, and everybody hates the Niners because everybody's beat up in training camp. It's Shanny. He's beat up himself. They'll win 11 games. I'm not there with the Rams, but in college football, I think the Ducks are trendy for a reason. And I'm trying to find a way to fade them. And I can't, dude.
Think about, Horvat, think about last year, right? Penn State was so trendy, and we both love them. And look how that worked out with a coach like James Franklin. And then Texas. Everybody loved Texas. Arch was going to be the next greatest thing ever. They don't even make the playoff. More often than not, right, more often than not, the trendy team just never does as good as everybody else thinks. And Oregon is absolutely the trendy team this year. And again, Dan Lanning, we were talking about with Zach, as much as everybody loves the guy and is solid of a coach as he is, he doesn't win the big games. He doesn't beat the top teams and the top coaches. And he lost both of his coordinators. And even though he's just hiring from within, and I'm sure both of those guys will be do a good job, it's just tough, man, to replace both of your coordinators, win a championship. For me, I actually think it would be Indiana. If I had to pick one of the teams, if I had to place a bet, I just think Cignetti's that good, dude. I really do. And we see it in college football. I mean, teams, if they're going to win it, they tend to go back to back, Saban did it. Kirby did it. Dabo did it. And if we all think Cignetti's as good as he is, then why the hell not? Maybe he'll just go back to back. That defensive line is going to be disgusting. I think Hoover's a great fit. Receiver room's awesome. Running back's great. They beat everybody that they're supposed to beat. They don't fear anybody. And you know that they're not going to get outcoached in any game that they're going to play, and they're not going to make any mistakes. So keep doubting Indiana if you will. But if I actually had to place a future on any Big Ten team to win the title, I actually think it'd be the Hoosiers for me.
That happens, and we gotta throw Cignetti in maybe not the GOAT conversation, because to me that's still Nick Saban. I don't know though, man. If he gets it done and he wins 2 in a row at Indiana and goes to the playoff for the 3rd year in a row, it's gonna be hard to argue. But yeah, they just have the blueprint. They have it figured out now. That's why I don't think that they're ever gonna be. I don't think there's ever gonna be a down year unless the entire team gets hurt. But just because they figured it out and they're hitting out all these portal plays, portal. It's so important, man, because we know that Hoover could play the position. You don't know that these 18, 19-year-olds can. And look at Bryce Underwood. So much money that you pump in. Even if you're UCLA, who I actually they might be all right this year. We already talked about that on the first episode. They could go back and listen to me hype up Nico Imaliava for another season. But Dante Moore goes there as a true freshman. They're paying him $4 or $5 million, and now he's at Oregon, and he's going to be the number 1 overall pick. So I would rather go in the portal and get my guy.
Great stuff. Thanks again to all the great guests we had on today. Dylan Sin joined us to talk Indiana, Purdue, and Notre Dame. Daniel Gallen stopped by to talk Penn State. We had Clayton Sayfie on to talk Michigan. Tyler Talkman, Iowa. Zach Neal, Oregon. And Bobby Schneider to talk Nebraska. If you missed any part of today's podcast, you can go watch it back on our live Twitter stream, Twitch stream, YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. We will be doing weekly podcasts, and next week, Ryan, we will have actual games to talk about. We will be previewing week 0, so looking forward to that. For Ryan Horvat, I'm PJ Glasser. This has been Campus Blitz here on Game Day Garage. Appreciate all you guys tuning in and leaving some of your comments as well. We will see you next week. We'll have actual games to talk about.